So this is an interview from the OneRing.net with Philippa Boyens, and they are the ones that were kind of tacked on there at the end of production with War of the Rohirrim, Boyens and Peter Jackson as executive producers. But they're here and they are involved, I guess, at this point. So this is an interview talking about the return of Saruman in War of the Rohirrim.
Was it kind of emotional seeing him on the screen?
It was actually. I think we have a really beautiful letter from Chris that he wrote to us. It wasn't actually at the end of any of the movies. It was out of the blue. He was in London and he wanted to write to us. I think he missed New Zealand a little bit. And so I have this letter that is framed in my office. And it's one of the few times I've ever done that, is frame this letter. But you know, when we reached out to Geeta, Lady Lee, who's sadly no longer with us, but is now with her beloved, I like to think. She honestly, she said the thing that I think Peter felt in his heart was that actually Christopher would have wanted this. And so we went into his records. I got to go back into all and hear his voice, not just doing the lines, but talking to us as we were recording them. And we found, we based it on a line from The Hobbit, which is, are you in need of assistance, my lady? Something like that, a version of that line. And we thought, okay, that's a line. We can see how many takes he did of that. Can we use it? Can we find a new read on it and change it up a little bit? And our brilliant guys did that. But it is a authentic bit of Christopher Lee performance that it's based on that line. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So we're thrilled for us all.
Can I just tell you another bit of trivia about that is, to be honest, we didn't know if we could find that. And so just as a sort of like, okay, due diligence, let's see if there is a cast alike, as someone who could do the voice out there. Now, I know the internet's going to say, of course, there's a million people who could have done Chris Lee's voice, but do you know what? I don't think so. I'm so glad we used his own voice, and it's fantastic.
Okay, so Saruman will be returning for The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. It sounds like it's very small, like a cameo, a line, and it's kind of interesting insight into that in particular. It kind of brings up the issue of actors after they've passed and using that. I do feel that Christopher Lee would have loved to have been involved if he were still around, and I think that this is the way to go if you were going to do that. So they found lines that he recorded already, so it's not AI. That would definitely have turned off a lot of people. It does bring up that issue though about like how Hollywood treats actors, their likenesses, and especially after they've passed. But that is interesting. A little bit of a tidbit there. And we have seen that in trailers, I believe. We have seen Saruman, how he's going to look. The animation looks great. And yeah, I could definitely see why people are concerned. They're definitely taking creative liberties when it comes to filling out the story, in particular when it comes to the unnamed daughter of Helm Hammerhand, that they've now named Hera, and all that. And we'll see. I can see why people are very skeptical, and I'm increasingly so myself, because I feel like the theme of studios today when it comes to Tolkien is very corporate. And I get that this is a business, but you are a steward of a beloved mythology. And I really feel like it needs to be treated as such, with artistry and care. And that's basically what, at the end of the day, I get it. It's a business and you want it to be successful. But I do feel like that goes in hand and balanced with striving to be artful and honoring the legacy of the original IP, of the author's work, of the original creator's IP and stories, that those have to work together. Those have to be balanced out. And I worry too if it's just being too much of the corporate side when it comes to Middle Earth, when it comes to Tolkien stories. So we'll see. I do feel it's going to be better than Rings of Power. I feel like they have more to work with as far as they have the particular rights for the particular stories that they are doing. So they have the appropriate rights there to that. And we'll see how this goes moving forward. I get the skepticism, definitely. At the end of the day, I hope it's done well and honors Tolkien and his themes and his characters. And yeah, there's going to be some creative liberties, but hopefully it's well done. I have no expectations, but I always have. Now I have a more of an air of I'm less optimistic when it comes to that, because when it comes to studios and Warner Brothers, and because it feels like it's just so commercial in the treatment of Tolkien's mythology. And I hope they can pivot away from that. I hope this is the start of that, of them really trying to make an effort to treat Tolkien's mythology with care, and especially if they're doing more things with it. I mean, I would love to have more Lord of the Rings video games. I think that's an awesome way to explore his universe and his stories and really get you immersed in it. And they've kind of fallen flat in that regard recently. I think probably with the exception of Moria, that game. That seemed to have been well received and looks fun. But for the most part, yeah, I miss what the Lord of the Rings games used to be. And the Lord of the Rings Online, I hope we can get a new Lord of the Rings game with that. But they all have to be honoring the legacy, honoring Tolkien. And when it comes to Christopher Lee's voice lines, however, I am intrigued by that. Obviously, this universe in particular, he loved this story. He loved this world. I think they handled this appropriately when it comes to the permissions and all of that. But I don't think it would have worked if they were having to recreate his likeness. I think in animated form, just solely using his voice contribution is the only way that I think this particular cameo works. Because otherwise, you run into the controversial issue of digitally resurrecting a deceased actor, and I don't think it should go there, personally. Even if you have permissions, I'm of the opinion that I don't think it's anyone else's permission to give, but the actors solely. And if they don't expressly say that they're okay with it, if they have it in writing that they're okay with it, if they negotiated with whatever studio for a particular character or just whatever. But if they don't, and you don't know, I feel like it was up to them to decide whether or not they were okay with it. And a lot of actors today, I mean, the technology with AI and deepfakes wasn't what it used to be, and it wasn't used very much at all. So I feel like all actors should kind of put it out there and put it in writing and get that legally going if they are for or against it, because now they have to have these conversations, and I think they should have it with their loved ones as well as in whatever estate that will be looking after their legacy basically after they're gone. So you need to be having these sorts of conversations, because I'm of the opinion that I just don't think it works with the digital resurrection. I think it makes audiences uncomfortable. I never liked it in Rogue One. I never liked Peter Cushing's Tarkin, and I never liked Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia. I really felt that that last one in particular with Princess Leia was unnecessary. I feel like you could have just seen her from the back. You didn't have to see her uncanny looking face. And especially when you have like her daughter looks like her, like there are actors that can faithfully look like other actors. I feel like there's a ton of actors that could have done it. I just don't feel it's necessary to do it. And it always like looks uncanny, and it will always affect the art and the finished product, I think. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Rogue One, but I think Tarkin's looked better than Princess Leia, but still it doesn't look good. And I think it just would have been much better to just recast those roles. Or for Princess Leia, it was wholly unnecessary. I think it would have been much better if we just saw her from the back. Like, we get it. We know who it is. Her figure is pretty well known with the iconic dress and the hair buns. We knew who that was. We didn't need to see the uncanny looking face. Uncanny Valley. Yeah.